everyone, it's Shadow the Rat, and for today's video, I will be showing you how you can train your rats to fetch an item to your hand, which is a trick where they grab an item, pick it up, and bring it to your hand. Prop-wise, you will need a small item such as a pen cap or water bottle cap. You can also use a slotted cat ball or mini wiffle ball. However, these can be a bit difficult for rats to pick up when starting out, and so I recommend working with the easier items first and then transitioning to the ball once they have fetched down. One final note before we start, and that is if you would like some more information on some of the basics of rat training, feel free to check out my Ultimate Guide to Rat Training video, which I will also be linking in the description down below. Now this trick tutorial is an alternative method of teaching fetch, and you can compare it to the box method of training fetch that I showed in a prior tutorial video. I will be linking that box method video in the description below just in case you want to check it out, and typically I find that newer trainers tend to have more luck using the box method. However, the more free shaping based fetch to hand method, which I am showing in this video, is a little bit more versatile when it comes to applying it to other tricks. Either method will work, however, and so if you are having trouble with this method, I highly suggest checking out the box method video as well. Okay, so to start training fetch to hand, you want to start by teaching your rat to pick up the item. To do this, you want to start by rewarding any interest they show in the item, and if they don't show any interest in the item, you can either rub a treat on it or move it around to get your rat interested. As soon as they show interest in it through sniffing it or even just looking at it, you want to go ahead and reward them. Reward them in rapid succession for showing interest in the item, and once they start to consistently show interest in the item, then you want to build up your criteria, starting to wait a second or two to see if they will try nudging the item, and then biting the item. Once they will consistently bite the item for a treat, you can then move on to the next step. At this point you have two options. The first is to train this trick with a container first, just as you would train basketball. If you use this method, you will later have to introduce your hand, but that's really not difficult at all, and having two hands available when first teaching this trick can be worth the extra training step. The second method, and the one I will be showing in this video, is simply using one hand as your target from the start. This method works just as well as using a container, and it has the benefit of making your hand the very first thing your rat learns to place an item onto, which will likely become their default later on. No matter if you use a container or your hand to train this trick, it's taught in exactly the same way, so even if you decide to use a container, you can use these exact same steps to teach your rat to place an item into it, instead of onto your hand. Okay, so now you want to start by priming your target, which in this case is your hand. Go ahead and place one of your hands in front of your rat, and then place a treat on it repeatedly. Once you have done this a few times, your rat should realize that this is where they're going to be rewarded, and so when you introduce the item, they will be more likely to bring it towards your hand, just because this is where they are used to being rewarded. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start using the item as well. Place your chosen item to the side of your hand, and lure your rat to it. When they pick up the item like previously practiced, you want to use your second hand to try and guide them into dropping it onto your first hand. At first you want to reward them even if they miss your hand, but once they have repeated this a few times, you want to then start to only reward them when they get it either onto your hand, or at least drop it close to your hand. Continue to build this up, gradually increasing criteria until your rat is consistently dropping the item onto your hand each time. Now you want to repeat this on the other side of your hand. Just like before, you will need to initially reward your rat even if they miss your hand, but once they start to get the idea, you want to increase criteria so that they either have to get it onto your hand or close to your hand before you reward them. Continue to build this up until your rat is consistently placing the item onto your hand. Now you want to start to switch it up, placing it on one side and then the other, and rewarding your rat each time they successfully put it onto your hand. Once they can consistently drop the item onto your hand from either side, then it's time to start adding distance. Place the item a bit further away from your rat on one side, so that they have to stretch a bit to reach it. Since you are increasing criteria, you may need to go back to rewarding them even if they don't get it completely onto your hand, but you want to quickly build this up to them consistently dropping the item onto your hand. Repeat this for the other side of your hand as well, and then again you want to practice switching it up by placing the item on one side of your hand, then the other, and only rewarding your rat when they successfully put it onto your hand. Now you want to start to add even more distance, placing the item far enough that your rat must walk a step or two in order to bring the item back to your hand. Gradually build up how many steps your rat must take before they place the item onto your hand. Make sure to repeat this on both sides, and once your rat can fetch the item to your hand from several steps away, you can begin to gently throw the item. Once you can gently toss the item and your rat will fetch it to your hand, then they have successfully learned to hand fetch. One final note before I end this video, and that is if you decided to teach this trick initially using a container, you can still convert it into a hand fetch fairly easily. All you have to do is place your hand above the container your rat has learned to fetch an item to, and when they go to drop it into the container, it will instead land on your hand. Reward them for this, and repeat it a good 5 or so times. At this point you can remove the container and just offer out your hand, and your rat should fetch the item to your hand. Along the same lines, you can also use hand fetch to teach your rat to place an item into a container. At first, you want to start by holding your hand above the container and rewarding your rat for fetching the item to your hand. Next, you want to start to gradually fade out your hand by only leaving 3/4 of it over the container, then half of it over the container, then 1/4 of it over the container, and finally rewarding your rat for fetching the item to the container alone. And that's all there is to it! No matter how you train it, fetch is a great trick that makes up the basis of pretty much any item-based trick. Hand fetch in particular gives you a lot of precision over where your rat will place the item, and it can be easily converted into basketball or other such tricks using the method above. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!